Well, first of all, this guy was not just a new name for me. I actually asked around other Russians, saying, forgive my ignorance, but who is this guy Boris Nadezhdin? Roughly translated, his surname means hope in Russian. And the answers that I've received are, we don't know. And this was actually admitted in, I believe it was a Washington Post article, where it said that most Russians don't know of this man, much less care for him. The Washington Post was trying to style this as a protest vote of some sort, given that Nadezhdin is promising to not only end the SMO and enter peace talks with Ukraine, but also release political prisoners, including the West's darling Alexei Navalny, of course.
Okay, let me
We've had
just
a
clarify when you say SMO, that's what we call the war in Ukraine. In Russia, it's
You
called
do?
the Special Military Operation, the SMO. And Alexei Navalny also presented as what I like to refer to as a media darling, means the
Mm.
media loves him and tells you you should love him, when he only has about a 3% support and only in urban centers in Russia. So he's only a media darling in the West. I'm sorry I interrupted, but go ahead.
No, thank you for clarifying. Yes, and again, with the case of Navalny, often labeled the opposition leader, which then betrays the West's lack of knowledge of the support of parties in Russia. We have Putin's party, obviously, with the majority, the second, and what you would clarify or classify as the opposition being the Communist Party. Navalny, as far as I know, is not a communist. However, the West incorrectly labels him as this opposition leader. That leads us to these other candidates. You and your audience may recall Ekaterina Duntsova, a female journalist who came out of nowhere, very similar manifesto, ending the SMO, the special military operation, the conflict in Ukraine, and yada, yada, yada. She, by her own admission, made a mistake in filing her application to be a candidate and was therefore refused. The West, of course, jumped upon that immediately, saying this was evidence of corruption and rigging elections. And now we have Boris Nadezhdin, who, again, has just come out of nowhere, actually a physicist by training, and served one term in the State Duma 20 years ago. So he's been recycled and placed here. He's being stylized again as this protest vote against Putin. But as soon as the West holds anyone like Duntsova or Nadezhdin now up on a pedestal, that's actually highly counterproductive to the Russian people. Once they see that, that arouses suspicion. They therefore know this person is quite possibly a Western shill. Now, if I use a reverse analogy, look what happened to Elon Musk and Tucker Carlson in the West as soon as Dmitry Medvedev praised their words or actions. They were immediately labeled Putin puppets and shills for Russia and propagandists. We see the same effect now that's rapidly coming into Russia, where as his name, Nadezhdin, is being repeated and certainly publicized in Western media, it arouses that same suspicion in the Russian people. Now, for the West to then claim about, oh, how come he hasn't been jailed and all these things, which he is saying, oh, I don't know why I haven't been treated the same way as Navalny. The West tries to make that out like, oh, wow, yes, he's a real truth teller and he's risking his life, he's in jeopardy. Absolutely not. Again, let's look at the other facts. In recent polling, President Putin has an above 80% approval rating and has collected, as an independent candidate, it has to be noted, 3.5 million signatures to support his candidacy. Why would you need to rig any elections, and why would you be threatened by some outsider who's just come out of nowhere? The Russian people, as I've said in previous interviews with you, have it's been proven to them that Putin was right in the past when perhaps they didn't believe him. The West, in the way they've treated recently Russian athletes, stripping them of medals, it's very clear to Russians what the West thinks and feels about them. And then we have in these Western articles talks of expats, Russians who have fled. Now that's quite possibly true that Russians in places like Tbilisi in Georgia and other countries maybe they are signing up for this guy. And again, as the Washington Post said, they don't know who he is. They just know that he's against Putin. So the risk is, however, that with funding and support outside of Russia, it could, by Russian laws, be seen as a foreign agent. And especially if you're donations, there is a finite sum that can be raised. I've had the same problem when raising donations for Donbass. And that is a legitimate protection and mechanism against NGOs and other interfering organizations in Russia. And of course,
Right.
we can predict how the West might react if Nadezhdin is found in breach of such mechanisms and laws.
Oh, they won't care. Alexei Navalny is foreign supported, has accepted aid from
Yeah.
United States linked agencies. So no, they don't care about that at all. If you want to know the truth about Alexei Navalny, I refer to the great Jacques Bode book about Alexei Navalny and how much of a joke it is.